I hear that all the time. Let me tell you what a libertarian is. Libertarian is someone who says you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want to be. Just don't force others to be like you.
Got it.
That's what we are all about. We are all about long-term solutions, not short-term solutions. We're all about changing culture, not just changing law. Law, we have to remember something. At the end of almost every single law is a guy or a gal with a gun who will put you in a cage. And if you don't want to go in that cage, he or she is going to kill you. That means you only use law when it really matters, not just because I'm angry, not because I don't like you, not because you should do some activity I think you shouldn't do or whatever the case may be. It's only for important things like life and liberty and property and things like that. That's when you use violence. That's when you use force. That's what libertarians are all about.
That guy is pretty smart. Don't know who he is, but I'm happy to listen to him. It's Larry Sharpe here with Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live. Thank you so much for sitting here and chatting with me. The brand is strong. We are libertarians. We are drinking coffee, and we are live. It is amazing. Yes, I am very happy to have with me a personal friend of mine, someone I've worked with, someone who's helped me out, someone I've helped out, a key part of the Libertarian Party, particularly in New York State, but also in Rochester, the man himself, Kevin Wilson. How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic.
I am so happy to hear that. Guys, please like, share, and comment, and let people know that we are here so that other people can see it and they can understand what's happening. Kevin, you are running for Congress, aren't you?
I sure am.
What the hell are you thinking, brother?
I don't know, man.
Don't you have enough pain in your life?
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm not busy enough. I need to go and put myself out there with that too. I mean, why now and why Congress? And you've done things like this in the past, but something else about you, Kevin. You're not just a candidate. You have also been someone who's been an advocate. You've also been an activist. You've been a support. You've been a campaign manager, right? You've been all these different parts. Why Congress? Why now? Yeah, and kind of leading up to that, I have been in many parts of campaigns. I'm a county chair for the Monroe County Libertarian Party up here. I've been a campaign manager for Andrew Hollister's campaign back when he ran for city council. I helped your campaign. I've been all over the place, but I've never stepped in and run myself. And I think it's about time I did that. We really needed someone here in Monroe County. In part, so I have a lot of reasons why I'm running, but in part, I am running because we need someone to step up in a high profile position and be able to speak to libertarian values and libertarian issues, someone who could be a nexus for local media to gather around and look to for that opinion on, well, what's the Libertarian Party position on this? And, something I found over the years is that I'm able to do that a little bit as a county chairman, but as a candidate, and I've helped elevate other candidates to do this, but as a candidate, you're able to get out in front of the media and speak to these issues with a lot more authority than you are as a party member alone. And
We've talked about that before, right? Yeah. The idea of top of the ticket, getting the press and kind of pushing it down to the bottom of the ticket so they can get both press and have the relationship and actually maybe get some impact or some victories.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about building that up, generating the conversation, and we need someone who is able to speak to these issues, understands what it means to speak to the media. And I didn't want to just run some rando in this position or just fill someone in. I think you and I kind of agree on that. We don't want to just run people for the sake of running people.
Sure.
We want to run someone who's going to have strong libertarian values, be able to speak to the policies, and be able to connect those policies with the issues of everyday people, right? How can we be the solution to the problems and challenges of the average voter who may not know who we are?
So where you're running in Rochester, is your congressional seat only Rochester, or is it across other parts?
It is mostly surrounded around Rochester. It's just Monroe County minus a couple towns, and it's a Democratic seat. It's been a Democratic seat for over 30 years.
Is that all?
Yeah, is that, I know, right? We are from New York, so right, yeah, you're like, oh, only 30 years? That's a short amount of time. But there's the incumbent who had only won a couple years ago. The person before that had stayed in that seat until she died. And and that now we're in the situation where we are. And I think this is I planned on running before everything happened, but I think this is a particularly unique year for trying to elevate the conversation about libertarian ideals and getting people to think outside the box. They're seeing what's going on with how Democrats and Republicans have responded to crisis, and they're thinking, my goodness, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so breaking people out of that fear and giving people an alternative is incredibly important. And that's what I hope I can do.
So let me ask then, right? A lot of people have changed what was valuable to them or what was critical to them, after the COVID crisis hit, right? So I know you were thinking about running before COVID, right? So
yeah,
did you have specific issues that were really kind of hot buttons for you prior to COVID? I mean, I know you had a lot of them, obviously, but were there one or two that were like, these are the ones I got to talk about?
Yeah, there's a handful of issues. National debt being one of them. It's something that, again, it's a bipartisan failure that spans generations now. We're now, I lose track of the number now, 25 trillion, 27 trillion. I mean, what's a trillion here or there, right?
At this point, does it matter, right? It might as well be a gazillion.
Not even real at this point.
Yes.
What are we doing here? But the point is, even in times of crisis like this, we're already paying $328 billion a year in interest on the debt alone. And again, that old saying, a billion here or there starts to add up to real money after a while. $328 billion is, my goodness, real money. And it's something that we need to address. It's very expensive. And I get the idea of spending money in a crisis, but we need to find a way to limit our budgets to make sure that we can get back to something that starts to approach reasonable and be responsible, govern responsibly. And again, we've seen generation after generation of failure. We need to break out of that mold.
So debt, big for you.
That's a big one.
Now, after COVID hits, right, does that change or not, right? I mean, now COVID hits and we're going to be even more in debt. Is that still number one, or did something else creep in to be number one for you?
So I had top three issues before COVID, which is, probably
top three. I screwed up, Kevin. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. No, but we got to talk about both, right? Like COVID's now number one. That's all everyone wants to talk about, right?
Absolutely.
So we got to talk about COVID. We can talk about the COVID stuff now because that's what people want to talk about. That's the immediate challenge that's affecting every single American and certainly everyone in my district. Here in Rochester, we just got word from Andrew Cuomo that maybe we'll take a more regional approach to how.
What?
I know, right? Who'd have thunk it? Using local knowledge, maybe New York City isn't quite the same as Rochester, New York.
So you're saying that localization might be a good thing? Look at that.
It might, in fact, be a good thing. That maybe we need to figure this out by hospital system instead of entire states, regions, or the entire United States.
Absolutely.
And, I'm seeing this approach where, the incumbent congressman is maybe he's well-meaning, but he's saying, we need to have a unified federal approach to this. We need to have President Trump shut down the country. We need the Defense Production Act to nationalize the supply of all medical equipment. And I'm like, no, what on earth about the federal government response would make you want to consolidate more power in the federal government right now? What we need is a decentralized approach. And that doesn't mean no cooperation, but it means that it's not a top-down, ham-fisted approach that may work for New York City or it may work for Atlanta, but maybe it doesn't work for Rochester or maybe it doesn't work for Wyoming County.
Sure,
we need to do that based on the situation on the ground,
right,
in these local areas and the hospital capacity in those areas. So my goal, if I'm getting elected to Congress, is to try to shift that culture, and it's a big shift, and it's going to be a big.
It is a big shift.
But it's to get people thinking about the federal government doesn't need to micromanage a crisis. The best way to manage crises is to empower people to be able to find these solutions on their own. I don't want to have to wait. I don't want anyone to have to wait for government permission to be able to help people in this situation.
Absolutely. Yes. And the funny part is one of the good things about this, and there are so many bad things about this, but one of the good things about this is, people thought that the individual wouldn't step up. They thought that the private sector wouldn't step up. They thought that, community wouldn't step up, but they kind of did.
Yeah.
They kind of did. And right now we're finding out that they kind of are, right? They really, really are.
Yeah, and it's been awesome to see. Like here in Rochester, we have Hickey Freeman, which is a famous suit maker. They are making masks right now. They're making cloth masks for
there we go. Yes,
frontline workers. We got a distillery, Black Button Distilling. They're making what do you call it? They're making hand sanitizer for folks here. And I've heard about other states in areas where like that process is getting slowed down by their governments. I'm like, no,
Absolutely.
You should be empowering those people to be able to help out as much as possible. And I see that type of stuff. And I see, we have like GM plants that are considering making ventilators in our areas, stuff like that. And they know what their capacity is. And
Absolutely.
they can say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost us to convert everything over, how much time it's going to work. Like communicate with the federal and state governments about the needs of those and the cost of switching that over. I'm fine with that voluntary cooperation. But if you just invoke the Defense Production Act and you just like tell these places to do it, maybe it's not really optimal for them to switch everything over. Maybe that doesn't make sense.
Maybe not. Exactly. Yes. And they're usually going to do what's going to make the most sense in the long run. I mean, have we ever found a situation to where companies haven't filled a need? They always fill a need, right? The market always fills the need because there's value in filling the need. Absolutely. So, all right. So I got debt is one. If I heard you right, decentralization as a way of empowering people to fix the COVID situation. Did I read that right?
Well, we'll fix, every situation, but yes, specifically, but every situation I think that philosophy can be applied to.
There we go.
Because with COVID, it's that. And if you look on my website and you're scrolling across the bottom of the screen there, I have solutions about reforming the FDA approval process and things like that.
Nice.
I don't have to bore everyone too much with that, but the main point of all that is to find different ways of approaching these problems that don't involve running through a glacial federal government.
Did you call it glacial?
Glacial.
I love that. Glacial. I'm so going to steal that. Glacial.
Do it. I
love it. That's awesome.
Larry, I'm going to steal so many of your ideas. It's fine if you can take a few.
Take them all.
Oh, yeah.
Take them all. Absolutely. So good. All right. So that was 2, right? I got it, right? That was 2. Is there a third?
Something I've been thinking about a lot is education. Right.
Okay.
So here, particularly in the city of Rochester, the education system is, struggling is putting it nicely.
It's really bad.
Yeah, like on a good year, the graduation rate is 60%. They're very excited last year that they got to a 60% graduation. Most of those students who are in that 60% weren't getting Regents diplomas. They're basically getting a type of local diploma, so they're not even quite getting to what most districts are able to get. The district is also $60 million in debt. Actually, scratch that. It was $60 million in debt before everything happened.
Got it.
That was before stuff hit the fan. Was when
so when it was failing and making up new degrees so that it could reimagine what a win is.
Yeah,
it was at that point it was already failing, and now we're even worse.
Yeah, so it is an absolute mess. And now it's even worse, right? And students are struggling to, I love it, Will. Teachers and students were already struggling before, and now, we're in this situation where the district isn't prepared to have an easy switch to any type of distance learning or even rethinking what it means to provide an education. And I think, again, a lot of these are kind of borrowed and remixed with stuff that you've talked about over the years. Is we need to rethink the idea of what does it mean to prepare children to be adults who can enter a career. And at the federal level, some of the things that we can start to do, a lot of this has to happen at the state and local level, but at the federal level, what we can start to do is think of ways that we can kind of pull back on national standards that shoehorn school districts into really specific situations where they become dependent on getting funding from the federal government and meeting these standards that don't always work for every student in every situation. It's clearly not working for the city of Rochester. Maybe it works for some places. I'm not saying don't adopt Common Core standards, do your thing. Like if you like what that is and you like that curriculum, go for it, do it.
If it works for your students, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, it's crazy, right? The thing that you hear me say all the time is we talk about how much we love our teachers, right? I get it. I do too, right? Yeah. I get it. I was one at one point, right? I get it. So what you do is the state decides we're going to have this person go jump through hoops for education and credentials and degrees. And then when they come into the classroom, we're going to say, only do what we say as administrators.
Right.
Well, then why the teachers spend all the time and money and energy getting all these degrees? Why do you find someone who actually cares about students? Why do that at all? If they're just going to do what an administrator says, hire a high school diploma person and say, do as I say, you're a robot, do this. I don't know why they get qualified people who care about education and then don't let them be teachers. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, we have these awesome teachers who are able to design unique and interesting curriculums to be able to educate students and have students connect with materials in ways that maybe the Common Core standards or any other standards don't necessarily account for, right? And that's what my vision for this is. And what I think is really important for any libertarian candidate running out there is to kind of define what the end goal is, right? I could say, well, let's eliminate the Department of Education. Okay, great. Yeah, I can agree with that. But like, what does this look like for the students on the ground? And what this looks like to me is that teachers are able to figure out and design curriculums that meet with the interests of the students while still teaching the underlying core concepts. Mm-hmm. If it makes sense for a student to be able to learn some way, that they're able to connect playing Fortnite to structural engineering or math, and some teachers are able to do that and make it actually work. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Or if they're like, all right, well, I'm in the, Pokemon Go right now. Okay, how can you connect Pokemon to biology or to math or to geography? Like whatever you're able to connect that thing is. I think that there's an endless world of possibility. And what gets tough in these situations is that we kind of don't know what the end goal looks like. We have to paint this vision for like other people are going to do this stuff. I promise. We just got to let them do it. But step one is just trying to figure out like, how can we find different ways for students to be able to shop around and be able to connect with materials and repurpose like school. So it's not merely a daycare, which is what it feels like to a lot of parents right now. And gosh, they're certainly feeling it now, but also like, how is it still a center of learning where you need like hands-on stuff, right?
Yep.
So maybe that's how we repurpose that type of stuff. And then the step two to that is how do we repurpose education again to make sure that students understand not merely how to do rote memorization, but how to learn the process of learning. And I always tell people, my college degree is in history. I'm not at all doing history professionally right now. I'm doing digital marketing.
Mine's in anthropology.
Right.
Yes.
And so, it's really important for students to understand what resources are available to them, as they're going out into the adult world to be able to make that career shift, to teach themselves, to go get paid training. And I think that both our high schools and often our colleges don't necessarily prepare students to do that. So we need a culture shift in education. And I think that, interestingly enough, the coronavirus situation may present a unique opportunity to start to have those conversations.
Yes.
Right.
I'm hoping that. Yes. Absolutely.
So like if students aren't able to go into physical school buildings and they need to do online learning, can we let students shop around more? Right. And I think I want to, if I'm elected to Congress, I want to make sure that any federal barriers to being able to do that are lifted. And, just trying to think of how, again, states can kind of adapt to a system to be able to meet students' needs in a different way and in a way that we haven't been able to approach before because we're kind of stuck in the rut of the routine of schooling as we've known it for the last 100 years.
So let me ask you the cheesy part, but the important part as a politician.
Right.
Do you have any, when I was running, I tried to come up with some cool sayings. Most didn't work. One kind of stuck was the regulate like onions. That one kind of stuck. It wasn't as powerful as I wanted it to be, but that was probably my best one, right? That's the biggest one. Do you have any of those? Do you have any of those? Build that wall or Medicaid for all or whatever is your cool thing. Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I put on my website like bold solutions outside the two-party system. I'm not married to that, so I got that. And maybe we have a lot of people listening right now. If you have any ideas on this, the goal of my campaign is about finding ways to empower you to make the world a better place. Like you all are the solution to being able to meet our country's challenges. And I want to make sure that the government isn't being a roadblock to delivering on those solutions, whether it's education or the coronavirus response or just starting a business to meet a need in your community. I need to think of some pithy way to say, no, the goal of my campaign is to empower you. And that's what it's all about.
So I got a question from Shelley. She says, what do you think about endowments to SUNY schools? I don't know. Does that really affect a congressperson? Should they have to spend those funds on students?
It's interesting. Like, so I was actually on the board of trustees, not at a SUNY school, but at a private college in the Finger Lakes. Endowments a lot of times are kind of locked up. A lot of times they can't spend them on students, and that's partly federal law. And maybe that's something that there needs to be special exemptions for in certain situations like this. What a weird situation, right? Like, but most of the times the colleges, even if they're facing financial trouble, can't spend down the principal of their endowment to assist students or to even keep the doors open without incurring a lot of penalties. But, actually, I would like to look that up because I've been thinking about that the past few days because it seemed like Harvard schools do the same thing. SUNY's unique because it's the state university system. But, there probably should be some way in these unique circumstances to be able to spend that endowment and keep your lights on, because I know there's a lot of small colleges that are going to struggle. Sure,
absolutely. So people are bringing up the idea of fathers, right? And that, babysitting and fathers and things of that sort. Do you have any view or any concern about that issue, about fathers or, getting kids away from mom and dad? Any of those issues? A lot of people are upset about that.
About the schools being used as a means to get kids away. No, I mean, that's a fair point, and the schools are ways for the government to be able to teach you the lessons that it wants to teach you to be a good citizen. And we can use good citizen in a whole bunch of different ways.
Yes, we can.
So I think the best way to combat that, like you listening to this podcast, especially if you have children, is, to think of ways to educate them yourself, right? Again, don't totally outsource education to the school. Learning happens every single day, and that's challenging. And again, for a lot of students, there's nowhere else where they're gonna learn about stuff, and that is what it is. And I think with the education solution that I presented, there's some interesting opportunities to try to get parents more engaged in that process. And the big challenge and the big pushback I will be getting with that is, well, some parents just ain't. And I don't know how to deal with that. I can tell people they need to step up, but
I think parents are doing it now by default.
Yeah, they are. They are. They have to.
Yeah, this is your point. I mean, I'm literally helping my kids with their homework and helping them do work, and so is my wife. We're doing it. We kind of have to. I think the one advantage you brought up, and I think you're totally right on this, Kevin, is you're saying that this is an opportunity. The crisis that the COVID virus is, and the reality of all the bad. If we can find a silver lining, it might be that now people will have those conversations when, if this was 6 months ago, they might not have even had the conversation.
No.
So let me go to the next one.
In a position to do that. Yeah.
How can we make impact this year with COVID, kind of shutting us down, right? I mean, we can't go out and have big rallies. We can't go out and do these things. And the news cycle isn't about us running for office. The news cycle is the body count of the virus, right? That's what the news, as you said, everyone wants to talk about COVID. Well, there's also an election this year. And it's not just the president, which is the thing that always drives me crazy. While the president is an important election, so are all the other ones, right? They're all important, to include the most local election, all of them. How do we handle that? Do you have do you have a plan? Do you have an idea about this, Kevin?
No, I mean, this year, again, it's another unique opportunity for us. People like you are building independent media that we're able to get the word out, connect with new audiences, and build up. The traditional media, you need to find ways to be able to stick out and try to push your way into that conversation, right? There are people who are interviewing, candidates for office who are presenting compelling solutions to these things. So my advice to you is write those compelling solutions, contact your media, start to build an audience, use social media. People are spending so much more time on social media right now.
Yes, absolutely.
It's kind of exhausting. I know.
Yes. I'm live 8 times a week. Yes. Yeah. I'm live 8 times a week at least, and I do at least 4 podcasts every week. So I'm somehow up 12 times every week. I got you. And no, Shelley, I don't just get my own television show. I wish I would. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, like I've got a radio show. I've got that. People can listen to that. Radio Free New York with Andrew
Plug that real fast. Plug the show.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, Radio Free New York. So we're on WYSL in the Rochester area, but you can catch the online versions on either Radio Free New York, the Facebook page, or Andrew C. Hollister's YouTube account or his Facebook page as well. So we're on all those things. I'm usually sharing it. So we're talking about all sorts of stuff on there. But again, it's about, building media and inching your way into the conversation, right? And to start to drive those policy issues and put them in front of other people, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to take forever. I know it's going to take forever.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
I'm impatient, but we got to do it.
And then how do we deal with the fear, right? The fear that my biggest worry here is I've got people now who are just afraid. And now when they get afraid, they want to rush to their corners, right?
Right.
If I lean right, I'm going to rush to my Republican corner. I'm going to vote for Trump, right? That's my guy who's going to save me, right? Or if I lean left, I'm going to run to Biden. I'm going to say that Democrat is going to save my life. That's my guy, right? How do we, not being Democrats, Republicans, how do we get around that fear? Is there a way we can do that?
We have to offer hope. That's really, that's I think the best weapon we have is we have to offer hope. We have to say, like, we're not going to be the ones that people are going to run to protect them, right? That's not what we do. That's not what libertarians do. And as someone on the outside, it's hard to even offer that, right? Even if we wanted to. Republicans are going to offer their own type of comfort and the centralization of power, and so are the Democrats, right? And they certainly are. And we're going to see quite a few terrible solutions coming through. And we already have seen quite a few terrible solutions coming through. So the best weapon that we have is to offer hope, to say, here's what our vision for the future looks like, where we have prosperity, civil liberties, and a healthy populace. And here's how we get to that. And how we get to that isn't through a centralized federal government or a heavy-handed state government. It's by giving people more liberty, building trust, and exercising that liberty responsibly. That's how we do that. And so being that beacon for, again, hope is what we have to do. And I hope other people will join me in that.
Are there any obvious niches, groups of people who you think will hear that message quickly, right? Who will go, you know what? Yeah, that guy, Kevin, that's my guy, right? I get what he's saying. I'm in. Are there any niches that you think will kind of naturally jump on your bandwagon?
Yeah. So I think that, the business owner, the people, the helpers right now who are already jumping in and making stuff happen, I think they're going to see that. They're going to be like, yeah, I wanted to help and I had to run through these roadblocks and that was frustrating. And I want to help get those out of the way. So starting with them, amplifying that message. And then the next one is just, again, people who are frustrated with the two-party system. It's, as you and I both know, we've experienced it before. There are a lot of people who say they want a third party, and half the battle is showing that we exist. The other half the battle is convincing them that we're a viable alternative, and we just need to keep chipping away at that. And we've grown quite a bit in the last few years. And I see people are mentioning like Second Amendment people. Yeah, that's another huge community. It's great. I realize I don't have my gun policy on my website too, but I'm a big supporter.
There we go.
You're right.
The show has helped you, Kevin.
Yeah, well, it's in draft mode, but yeah, I'm a big proponent of your right to self-defense. You have a natural right to self-defense, and that's what the Second Amendment clarifies. It's a restriction on government. This
is something that I think does happen to us libertarians. Some of the policies for us are so obvious, we don't think we have to say them.
Right.
But we do. But we do. But we think we don't have to because it's so obvious to us. But we do have to say them. Absolutely, we do. 100%.
Yeah, no, I know, because I think of stuff like that too. Even as I'm going over to my website, people are like, Kevin, where's your tax policy? I'm like, do you not want to lower taxes? I'm like, well, of course I want to lower taxes. I'm a libertarian. Why do you think I would want to raise taxes?
Exactly. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and as again, people want an alternative, but that alternative needs to, again, build hope. It's not enough for us to just say everyone else sucks and they're terrible, because when you do that, they just like, yep, you're right. That stinks. What are you going to do?
That's what happens. You're right. There's almost like a hopelessness, right? It's almost like a hopelessness that they go, well, I'm just going to go back to my guy, my gal. I'll go to my left and my right paradigm. That's what I'll do. I agree. It happens, in my view, far too often. Far too often. So, look, obviously you're going to run to win.
Yeah.
Obviously you're going to try to win. I got it. And I hope you do win. I absolutely do hope that you win. My question is, in case you don't, have you decided what a secondary win would be for you? For me, I was very easy, lucky for me, right? It's very easy. Yeah. If I lose, I get ballot access. I had an obvious secondary win or consolation prize. Do you have one? Have you decided upon one?
Yeah. Well, assuming I don't win, which, whatever. Yeah,
I know it's a minor chance you're not going to be our next comment. I know, but I'm just saying, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple goals that I have in mind outside of winning. Mm-hmm. When I started this race, we were still in a position, first of all, that we our ballot access in New York State for the Libertarian Party was going to be determined by the presidential vote. And part of my thought for running this is not only elevating the conversation of libertarian issues, sure, it's also maintaining that ballot access. And my hope was that by building a local nexus for people to be able to rally around in the 25th district, we'd be able to drive voter turnout for the Libertarian Party across the line, build awareness of our presidential candidates, and hopefully punch above our weight in Monroe County to make sure that the Libertarian Party keeps ballot access in the fall. So that was my original intention.
I love that concept because Monroe County has a lot of libertarians compared to other counties. It's got a lot of libertarians in it.
And we had about 10,000 people in our county vote for you. So there's
a lot.
It's people out there, and we want to just keep growing that. And again, and then the other side of that too is to elevate these policy issues. Joe Morelli, the guy who's the congressman in this position, probably feels pretty safe in his seat, to be honest. But if I can start poking him, getting part of that conversation, and getting him to at least think about these issues and concede points on these issues, that will start to feel more and more like a victory. So what I'll need from my supporters in this area is to try to force Joe Morelli to try to address libertarian issues, try to get him to address the problems with the FDA, to try to get him to address the problems with a centralized federal response to COVID-19, to get him to address the problems of the war on drugs, on immigration, on education, all these issues that we're talking about. I think there's opportunity for growth. In the only way a politician like him comes over is when he feels the pressure.
Sure.
When he starts to see votes leaking, we live in a system where it tends to drift towards two parties. But what we can do as libertarians is, as we start to build a bunch of support, our issues will start to get co-opted, and that can be very frustrating. But if we get actual policy victories out of it,
I'm good.
Great. If we start to build enough support where we're getting, 10, 20% of the vote, that's going to scare the crap out of him, because he's going to start to think he's going to lose. And he's going to say, all right, what issues can I slide over on to start to pull those people over? And that's kind of my secondary goal, is to, split the gap in the vote. At the very least, if I can't win, then at least split the gap and try to get him to co-opt my issues.
Gotcha. I love that. I like that. So you've got some fans here, by the way. See?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I have my buddy Sean, Agent McChaos, and Garrett, who's a
but
fan.
I have a question that someone brought up, and I kind of want to ask. It's a tougher question though. How do we get people who are anti-gun to, a lot of people who are anti-gun know that we are the only real pro-gun, pro-2A. I shouldn't say pro-gun. We're not really pro-gun. That's not really accurate. We're pro-Second Amendment, pro-self-defense, which can and may include guns if you choose that to be part of your of your world. Do you think there's a way that you can get, because there is, particularly in New York, there is a growing 2A anti-gun movement. They're stopping pistol permits now as non-essential. Yeah. I mean, you think there's a way, or?
No, I do think that depending on who you're talking to and how empathetic they are to this, and it doesn't always work, but pointing out the fact that the enforcement of gun laws is not equal. Right. So right now there's a significant disparity in the type of people who are likely to go to jail over gun possession laws, and that disproportionately people of color are more likely to face serious long-term legal consequences as compared to people who are white. And that's just the way the enforcement works in this area and across the state, is that's a fact. So just like the war on drugs, the war on guns in New York State
has a huge impact on not only your right to self-defense, but it is also using violence against marginalized communities who, suffer at the hands of the government.
So it's a great way of looking at it, because the people who would hear that message are often anti-gun, so they could hear that message.
Yeah,
I like that.
And yeah, I mean, so that's, and it's interesting. I understand, because I'm often on like kind of liberal channels too, and I understand the lean of this district. It's important to understand what are ways that you can communicate with those types of audiences where they're going to be able to hear you. And I always think of what you said, like all the candidates that you had in the past, you heard Gary Johnson.
Yep.
You listen to everyone, but Gary Johnson was the one who connected with you.
Yes.
And I want to find a way to connect with them where they're like, maybe they're ignoring libertarians, every libertarian, they're just a, dumb crank. But like, if I can connect with them on that one issue where they have some empathy, then maybe I can get through to them on other things.
Well, it's funny. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people wonder why, I guess I'm one of the more mainstream people who've run in the past. And I think people see me as more mainstream. And I think because of that, a lot of the mainstream people in the party want me to, disavow the social, the libertarian socialist, or disavow the anarchist, or disavow the this, or disavow that. I never do. And I don't, because I think people hear different messages who are different in their life, right? Each person will hear somebody else. People, a lot of people came in because of Ron Paul. I couldn't hear Ron Paul because, in my view, he was another politician, but I heard Gary Johnson. So I think people have to hear who they're going to hear. There's someone who's going to hear someone wearing a shirt that says, legalize, recreational cocaine. Someone's going to hear that, right? And someone's not, right? Yeah. So I kind of want us to have all of the messages, so that wherever someone is in their world, where they are in their head right now in their life, they can go, you know what? That makes sense. Because I always say the vast majority of people come to our movement not because they read our platform, but because they heard somebody say something that made sense to them, whatever that was. And hopefully it's somebody who goes, that guy, Kevin Wilson, that guy makes sense. And then boom, before you know it, here they go. Here they go, right? See, and Shelley says, Bernie supporters looking for a leader. Maybe that leader is you, Kevin.
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe it is. I love it.
People frustrated with it. Yeah.
Hey,
and then,
whatever works, right? Whatever works. And that goes back to my 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
If I can agree 80%, I'm pretty much good. That pretty much makes me happy. So, all right, Kevin, is there something specific you wanted to talk about specifically?
No, I think we covered a lot of the big issues here. Again, my whole campaign is trying to set that vision for what a libertarian world looks like. It's to make people bridge that gap. It's not just we're going to cut spending, we're going to cut government here and there. It's how do we unleash a world of possibility when we have greater freedom, right? And that. Yeah. And that greater freedom, is going to come in the form of people addressing the coronavirus issue, addressing education issues, and not for nothing too. And then the other side of that too, it is stopping government violence, right? Like if we stop the war on drugs, like that is something that hurts people. I love the clip that you played at the top of the show, and like it's such a great thing. And I always tell people that, and I got into the fights about it this week. I was like, no, don't ever pass a law unless you're willing to hurt someone for it.
Yes,
that's what it is. And so trying to build that hope, and then also trying to build that understanding that law is a weapon, and we need to consider very carefully what's happening. And I love the NSA spying. I used to be part of the Restore to Fourth movement. That was my first activism in the Rochester area. So that's a big issue for me. And Federal Reserve too. Lots of great stuff in there. And, I'm loving a lot of the comments. I'm seeing them come in on the side, and, this is interesting.
But the reason why I said that, right, was exactly what James is talking about. There are libertarians in the spectrum, right? We aren't just all the same, right? No one is purer than the other. Otherwise, everyone will say they are. But where we actually literally, really get together is the idea that don't force your views on others, right? And
yeah,
that show I was on when I said that, Miss Ebro in the morning, that's New York City. That's New York City morning show. New York City, in case people don't know, a very liberal city. In case you didn't know that. And still, it was popular. People liked it. It made sense. I'm trying to get as many people into the movement as possible. And Kevin, I'm glad you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's building a broad coalition that we can all work together. We apply that 80% rule, and I want to find a way that we can build a broad coalition to start pulling back some of the worst aspects of the state. You know, I know I'm not, you know, some of my inclinations are to be like, yeah, some days I'm like, yeah, let's tear it all down. Forget it. Forget the government. Forget all of it. This is terrible. Yeah, like some days I get like that, but you know, like in my practical life, I'm like, all right. I remember, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He was at one point the chair of the Libertarian Party. He said, well, he was an anarchist, but I said, well, you know, how do you start to dismantle a state? And he's like, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Absolutely.
All right, you know, I'll take that. If we can start pulling back some of the worst aspects of it, and just getting to a point where we can have just a little bit more justice, a little bit more freedom, then yeah, why wouldn't we take those victories where we can? Let's build coalitions that make sense to start to accomplish some of those tangible goals.
I love it. I love it. All right. So if you want to get a hold of Kevin, head over to kevinwilsonforcongress.com. What's your Facebook page, Kevin?
Yeah, it's Kevin Wilson, Libertarian for Congress. So if you go to facebook.com/Kevin Wilson ROC, that's what the link, the URL is. And send me a message. I post quite a bit on there, and happy to have
Send him some money too.
Yes. You know, it's terrible. I was your fundraiser, Larry, and look at me. I'm not asking for money. How many times did I ask you, Larry, you need to ask for money whenever you do one of these campaign videos?
See, so
I'm on the other side of it.
I am returning the favor. I am returning the favor. Head to his website. I know a lot. Look, to be forward, you guys, I say this all the time. I know a lot of people are strapped right now, losing their jobs, all that stuff. I get it 100%. However, if you can't give any money, then you can share, you can like, you can comment, you can tell your friend. That's free. So if you're not in a position where you can give Kevin any money, no worries. Share his stuff everywhere. Let people know where he is. Let people know he's running. I don't care if I hope they're in his district, but if they're not, still good, because they'll tell their friends. But if you can donate, please donate. And Matthew just did.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Really
there we go. If you are in a spot that you can, then please donate. If that's where you are financially, I know a lot of people aren't. If you're not, you know what? Share. She's in your district. She can share.
Awesome.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Larry. It's been fun.
All righty. Have a good one, guys.